Welcome everyone to the Witches Movie Coven. Happy Beltane, happy May Day. A couple days late, but it works in Hollywood. Welcome. We are talking about the Wicker Man, the original Wicker Man, 1973. Let me quickly introduce or have people introduce themselves. My name is Patti Negri. I am one of your hosts, and we have Jason Mankey, Heather Greene, Richard-Lael Lillard, and Courtney Buckley. So if everybody wants to say hi, I just literally flew in moments ago, just enough to put my horns on and a little blush, no eye makeup.
And boy, are your arms tired.
And boy, are my arms tired.
I was just going to say you look fabulous with your horns and your May crown, and you are our May Queen tonight, and I love it.
Okay, I'll take it. It's a toss between Richard-Lael and myself, but it's okay.
No, I think you're definitely the May Queen. I'm just a show queen. There's a difference.
Okay, so how is everybody? Why don't we do a little bit of a check-in and then get to the movie? Who wants to go first?
Courtney Buckley, that's her.
Yeah,
Me. That's me.
That's me.
Oh,
Yeah.
I'm good, Patty. I am exhausted because I just watched 4 hours of The Wicker Man. And I got to see Richard-Lael again, like the day after we did our episode last week. So I was like 2 times in 1 week. So now this week I feel deprived of Richard-Lael, and I think that you should move to Salem so that I can see you every week. That's it. I got nothing else. I'm exhausted. Okay.
Yeah. Tired. Okay, then let's move on to Jason.
I'm sorry I wasn't here last week. I was in Florida for the Florida Pagan gathering. So it was from one sunshiny state to another, celebrating Beltane with a bunch of Florida pagans and witches. It's good to be back. I really miss you all. It always feels like it's a month when I'm gone for just a week.
It does. It's crazy. Heather, how are you?
I'm doing great. Getting over a little bit of a allergy attack from the lovely spring weather, which is one of the wonderful things that happens here in the South when Beltane comes around. You're going to be covered in green dust and white dust and all kinds of other blessings from the trees. So, but I'm back and had a great Beltane weekend, a little May Dew on the face on May 1st, and Walpurgis knocked, and I had a great article come out about that. You could check it out. So I'm happy to be with everybody here celebrating.
Yay. Thank you. Richard-Lael.
Well, speaking of being covered in white powder, that reminds me of my youth in Vegas. A long time ago. So yes, it is definitely Beltane. It is springtime here in New York as well, and I just finished SatanCon, which was fun. The best part about SatanCon, though, was leaving, because I had some lovely friends outdoors who were screaming some lovely things that I love to hear. And it was I'm well known, so I got the blunt of it. I mean, so the thing is, I go by Richard-Lael is my name, but Richard-Lael is very difficult for people to make a swear word. It's really, really difficult for someone to make Richard-Lael a swear word, but it is not so difficult when it's just Richard. And these friends out there were telling me, Richard, we know you, Richard, we know you. You need to find. Anyway, I just smiled and went on, but it was okay. And then I got to see Courtney Buckley for the second time. And we had like a late lunch with, I guess it was lunch, brunch almost. I don't know. It was a late thing. And her son was there. It was lovely. We had a good time. And then I went to Salem, and I got this crown because, I needed it. Like I needed another crown. But that was, and then I slept on the train, and I got back to New York, and that was it. That was fabulous.
That's beautiful. Well, I have been traveling. Since missing last week, which I can't stand. I was doing an event in deep desert of Bisbee, Arizona, which I thought was deep desert until this last week. I was filming in deeper Death Valley, and it is the scariest, most desolate, beautiful place ever. I literally spent 3 hours driving where I never saw another car, not another human, not a sign of civilization. My cell phone didn't work. My internet didn't work. My GPS went out, and I didn't have Apple Music, which that in itself was like, oh my God. And I didn't have an exact address because they won't take you. We were going to such a remote place. So it was like meet at a defunct ranger station. And I was looking up for aliens. I'm waiting to be chipped and probed or chupacabra. I was all by myself at night. I'm like, I'm a city girl. I'm always saying that. But I was filming with Zach and the guys, Ghost Adventures. I can't talk about it yet, but honestly, one of the scariest, funnest adventures, and it wasn't an adventure ever. But I didn't really like Beltane I was here in LA for one day, and it was for May Day, and it started out raining here. I didn't even do my workout in the beginning. I went and did the walk afterwards. Sebastian and I went and did the walk because but by end of the day, it was beautiful. We went to the beach and we played on the beach and we jumped the fire and we had ribbons and scarves and one of my better Beltanes in a couple of years. So thank you, Mother Nature came back out. Because I know Jason had commented that it's been more like in bulk. Yeah. And today is freezing. I just flew back in literally moments ago. But dang. So I missed you guys terribly. And
We missed you.
We missed you too.
Yeah.
Oh,
I'm glad you survived that desert. I'm gonna have nightmares about that because the only thing that scares me worse than not a doll or any dolls is aliens. So I'm terrified for you.
and this is
Retroactively.
that deep desert where I think that they are, and no one would ever know. Literally 3 or 4 hours without seeing a building, a light, and the darkest. I live in the city, and we have light pollution, so you don't. It was fun. But again, I'll take you next time, Courtney.
Jason.
We'll look for some aliens. So anyway, this week's movie, and I'm literally just finishing it right now, is The Wicker Man, the original. So I'm not even going to start it. Heather, do you want to do your Heather?
My context
No!
also.
Sorry.
Oh, sorry, I won't then,
No,
Courtney.
no,
I'm sorry.
The comment I just screamed so loud. So sorry. That was visceral. That was a visceral reaction.
The
Alien edition.
Scared alone. We can discuss that after the show.
No, we cannot. Nope. We cannot.
So
Sorry.
we have lots to talk about, Courtney. But so Wicker Man, getting on track. So first of all, my book, I'm going to say, was on American film and television. So this falls outside of my deeper studies that I've done because it is a British film. However, the nice thing about British films, specifically by this period, is that the film industries were kind of running parallel as our cultures were running parallel. So a lot of things that happened, especially in terms of witchcraft and the occult and things, really kind of affected both cultures, which again affected both films. So the films you see, so The Wicker Man is not far afield from the films you would see in the early 1970s here, but it's different because obviously it's from another culture, which is important when you're looking at films, and specifically why I kept to American films to kind of keep that concentrated cultural understanding. So with this film, we're looking at the early 1970s again. Of course, the aesthetic and a lot of the things we see in it are very much a part of that period of time. We have to think about that period of time being a time when the occult and witchcraft were something that people were interested, as well as the re-interest in folk magic. We also see anxiety that was happening there, as well as here, cultural and social anxiety. They were different, but they were both there. So we have that parallel going on. And horror films were very popular. Now, this particular film is considered one of the best examples of folk horror, which is a little different than just classic horror. And what is folk horror? I was trying to pinpoint an easy definition to describe it to everybody today because I knew it would come up, but it's not easy to pinpoint. One of the things that I like to think about, I look for the landscape, the focus of nature, the focus of folk culture being prominent, as well as an atmospheric cinematic feel to it. So a good example of that, more recent, would be Midsommar. That's definitely a folk horror. At the time, Crowhaven Farms is another folk horror. There's a lot of them. The British film industry was particularly very good at it, especially at this time of year. This period of time in history. They did a lot of folk horror. I will stop there, I think. The only thing left to say, we could talk about how it was cut up and the issues with it and all this stuff, but I'm going to stop there, and I'm going to save my opinions of the film and my critique for after, because I may disagree with a lot of people, because this has become one of the most popular films in the pagan community, both in the UK and here. And so I will save my opinions for later.
Okay.
A couple of little historical asides from someone who's really interested in early witchcraft history. This movie has a great deal of research into how pagans really felt about things in the early 1970s, and the source materials that they used in order to create some of the scenes and some of the ideas come from things that really influenced modern witchcraft and paganism, most notably The Golden Bough by James Fraser. And the idea of that sacrificial king for the good of the land is something that really was popularized by Margaret Murray in her books about witchcraft beginning in the early 1920s. So I really love this because it's sort of a love letter to that 50s and 60s witchcraft in a lot of ways, because they were using those same materials in the construction of the film.
And that's why it's popular. That's why it's one of the most popular films in the pagan community here in the US, and for that very reason. I mean, you have Beltane, Lammas, you have all these things that pagans were not seeing in any other movie. They were seeing witches and Satanism and all this stuff. Here you see these folk practices, like Jason said, that were recognizable. So yeah, that's absolutely correct. I still will save my critique, though.
We'll keep going back to you until you sneak it out. No. Okay, who wants to go? Courtney, since you've just spent 4 hours watching movie, do you want to go first on movie number 1?
Well, I feel like this show that we do here is making me sound like a prude, because once again, there was just so many body parts in the beginning of this movie that I get why they were there, but I was like, guys, like, really, again, now I'm gonna have to say this. And then one part that I did like was I was actually scream laughing. See, this movie, all these movies that we've watched recently, the older movies, I find a hard time, can I have words? I have a hard time calling or finding them horror. Like, they're silly to me, which is hard, but I forget where I was talking, guys. The COVID brain is back. One of the parts that I really liked in the beginning of the movie, I was like scream laughing. Oh, that's what I was gonna say. I was like scream laughing is when the sheriff comes outside, he's like walking to wherever he was going, and they're all out in the just randomly just doing it out in the field, and it's like he's like this behind the wall. He's like. I paused and rewound that like 5 times to see this. But the movie was chaotic to me. Like, I didn't get it. The twist at the end I thought was really good, only because I couldn't follow the movie the rest of the way. I felt it was hard to follow. And then because I know it's Jason's favorite movie, after I watched that one, then I watched the remake, because he told me, I have text receipts. He sent me a message and he was like, listen, this is the best movie I've ever seen.
They said that there is no remake of The Wicker Man. And it's sort of like this idea that there's a movie starring Sinbad as a genie that doesn't really exist.
Don't start with me about that. Yes,
there is no Nick Cage Wicker Man. It just doesn't exist. It's like the 4th Indiana Jones movie. That's coming out this summer. There wasn't one previously.
Mm-hmm. Well, I am not a big fan of Nick Cage, especially not as big of a fan as Jason is. So I was not excited to watch this. And what I can say, I disliked it as much as I disliked the first one, but it did. The second one, I think, put the first one more into perspective for me. Like, I think the first one was better. in the story sense. Like once I watched the second one, I kind of like, you know, could follow along because a lot of the lines were the same and, you know, whatever. But I found there were differences that made me appreciate the first one more. Like the second one was more serious, whereas I think the first one was a little bit more chilling because they were also happy all the time. And he was like freaking out and like devolving, but everyone else was just like very calm and like, this is just how we live our life, is what it felt like to me. Whereas in the other one, it was very dramatic all the time and very like they were trying to make it scary, and it still wasn't. But you know, I didn't like either of them. So you're welcome, Jason. I did watch it, but I didn't like it.
Okay, Jason.
So The Wicker Man isn't a perfect movie by any means, and I'm always kind of torn. Should I feel a little bit bad for Howie because I am not a fan of human sacrifice in any way, shape, or form? However, the villagers of Summer Isle give him plenty of opportunities not to be a sacrifice. When Britt Ekland tries to seduce you, you get seduced, right? I mean, that's the ultimate out right there. And for whatever reason, he didn't take it. I think it's a fun movie. I often like to think back, like, what if I'd been a pagan in 1973? Instead, I was just a baby. But what if I had been like a 30-year-old pagan back then and I'd seen this movie? It would have been the first time I'd ever seen anything approaching a pagan ritual on a big screen. How amazing and magical would that have been? And there are still moments, especially in the first half of the film, where I go, wow, those are things that look like my coven right now. All of the, not necessarily all the nakedness dancing around the fire outside, probably have some clothes on, but you know, there's some of that feeling there and that sense of loving the earth and loving the people you're with and not being ashamed of your body and, you know, embracing sexuality. There's so much to love in this movie. However, again, you know, maybe human sacrifice at the end wasn't how I would have liked it to end.
I'll go next, then we'll get to Richard-Lael. I agree with you wholeheartedly. I loved all the real-ish ritual and the joy of nature. I'm an elemental girl. This is like, yes, more dancing naked. Yes, more sex. Yeah, you know, I'm not into human sacrifice. I'm not even into animal sacrifice. I'm not into sacrificing anything. But I just loved it, and especially for way back then, seeing beautiful naked bodies and sex was like, that's how I felt. Opposite of you, Courtney, was like, yes, nature, love. And you know, and then we'll just take away the sacrifice part. But I don't know. The costuming, they get it. I never seen anything like this done on TV, especially from so long ago. That's 50 years ago. That's crazy how they pick it up. I don't know. Mm-hmm. I have nothing more to say. I've just finished watching it, but I really liked it. I liked everything about it, and I did not find it hard to follow. And I was watching it in the airport, and I was watching it in the Uber, and I was watching it. And I did not find it hard to follow. Made perfect sense. And so that's me. Richard-Lael.
I liked the naked bodies. I thought they were beautiful. I liked this human sacrifice. That's the only kind of sacrifice I like. The one thing that I didn't like was the fact that they burst out into song all the time. Who does that?
I do. I love the song.
You love the song.
I love the songs. Heather breaks out into song. I break out into song. Courtney breaks out. Jason.
No.
The songs drove me crazy. I break out the song, but maybe, I don't know. It was just weird for me because there were bozooms on screen. I don't know. I don't know if that was what made it so weird. I have to admit, my favorite part of the film was when Nicolas Cage pulls over the and then truck comes out of nowhere.
Oh, breathe, Jason. Breathe, Jason. Take
I
some
need
water.
a drink. I need a drink.
Okay. Better? Are you okay?
There's not enough whiskey for that line.
Okay.
Not enough.
Off the
One thing
bees.
you just said though, Jason, you said you didn't like that they were all young, beautiful bodies.
Oh,
I actually
yeah.
did, because after seeing some of the other movies where it's all the old naked people and the old witches look all icky. I mean, I guess a mix would be nice, but I kind of like the young. Beautiful.
I just like a mixture because it represents humanity, right? It's what we look like. It's what my coven looks like too, right? It's like the people that I practice witchcraft look like. So I always kind of prefer that. And it's nice to see everyone participating. Like they're saying, nope, got to be between 18 and 27, and then you're out, right? You know, let's have some 85-year-olds jumping over the fire. I'm down. I think that's beautiful in its own way.
I love that you all are celebrating the naked bodies, and then me, the movie prude, apparently, who is sweating like the sergeant was, like climbing the wall. No, stay away from me.
No, wait a minute.
I'm engaged to be married. Don't come in here naked.
But Courtney,
Nobody asked me.
I love the naked body. I think it's so beautiful. My parents, as you know, were evangelical, but they had naked art books out on their table because they thought it was just beautiful, like 70s art books. So it had a really distinct look, and I think the human body in all its form is beautiful. And I personally am always in a suit. I'm either in a 3-piece suit or I'm in my birthday suit. So there's no middle ground for me. I like the nakedness. I think the second one needed more nakedness.
Yeah, the second one had no nakedness, and that made me sad, which is odd because I like a little balance would be fine, but I feel like every movie we've watched recently is just the tatas in the face for like a long time.
There was
and it's like I'm not complaining. I'm not complaining entirely, but it's just like, okay.
I remember when I was watching Maleficent and Sleeping Beauty and the Frog Prince, I was just amazed by the amount of nudity in all of these films, and kept wondering how is Courtney going to react to all of this nudity in these G-rated Disney films.
Jason, thank you for bringing us your favorite Nicolas Cage movie.
Just staying with the naked for a moment. For years and years, there used to be a place here in Los Angeles called Elysium Fields. It was a nudist colony here in Topanga Canyon. It was beautiful. I went all the time, and I did spend one Beltane there. And it was I was a baby, young witch, and it wasn't necessary. I mean, they were all kind of witchy people, but it wasn't like this is what it were. But the coolest Beltane I ever saw was 200 people body painted around a maypole. And there was the young, beautiful bodies. There was the 85-year-old bodies. There was the 2, 3, 5-year-old bodies, the children. And it was all of humanity. I just never understood how people played tennis.
Male or female, because that is painful.
Yeah, that I never quite got. When you're frolicking on the grass is one thing. Hard game of tennis.
Yeah. Thankfully, we've switched to pickleball now.
Yeah. So, all right. So, was that everything, Richard-Lael? That was
That's everything for me for now.
And we're finally getting. Oh, we're going so fast.
Yeah, I need to know. I need to know Heather's view on the nudity.
I know we do. That's why we just had to.
I need a teammate.
Okay, so first, before we get to my opinion on the film and the nudity, because I do have a comment on the nudity, I would like to just say something that Robert Hicks has said, that he's heard chants being done during pagan rituals, but he's never heard them breaking out into a musical. I would like to point out that this is always something that I've proposed since I've been practicing, that I would like to do a full-on pagan ritual using as a musical. That would make me so happy and be so powerful. So I would just like to acknowledge that comment. So coming your way eventually, maybe to Broadway eventually too. So
I could do that right now.
Oh.
Beltane.
Oh,
dancing
but-
on the maple.
No.
It writes itself, Heather.
It does. Yeah, but we got it. We'll talk, Jason. We'll write Pagan the musical at another time and bring it to our show, because I could write that too, and that would be so fun.
I'll be in the front row.
Okay. There. Join us, Patti. You'll be part of it.
I will be there.
Okay.
I think everything should break into song.
You know what? I lived for fame as a child, and I believed that breaking out into musical at random times is something that would make the world better. But now let's get back to the nudity.
Oh yeah.
So this is the 1970s. So the early 1970s horror films, getting back to history, in the U.S. and to a degree in England, had a lot of gratuitous nudity, and specifically female nudity, and specifically bosoms, as Richard-Lael noted. A lot of them gratuitous and unnecessary, and to the story. The only point of them was, this is the early 1970s, let's go. So I found it unnecessary in points. I don't mind it when it's there and it's purposeful to the story and it propels the story, and it has, but I felt at points of this, I was just like, really? Completely unnecessary nudity. I don't think it's ugly. I'm not a prude. I don't, if it's purposeful, like I said, I have no problem with it. But I found that there were points in here where it was like, okay, really? Is that necessary? So, and that is very common to this period of time, though. So it's not unexpected in these horror films. And what bothers me more than the fact that it's there, because it's expected, okay, it's a horror film from the early 70s, you expect to see the boobies. But what bothers me more is that they were all women, which lends itself to what we talk about in film as being the male gaze. And so even though the film proposes that this is an egalitarian society and that women have power and all of that stuff, we still have very much a male gaze going on, because there's no male nudity. Almost none. I can't recall there being much of anything. Maybe a chest, a bare chest. So that is very common for the 70s too, that most of the nudity in the early 70s was women. And that was that male gaze, that misogynistic camera eye that we see coming through. So that's my feminist reading. That's my problem with that, with the nudity. Now, my reading of the film. Are you ready?
Uh-oh.
I do not love this movie. I think this movie has a lot of good things in it. I always find good things in every movie. My problem is less about the movie than more about how people read the movie. See, I know that pagans love it because they're seeing, like Jason pointed out, these things that they'd never seen before. I totally understand that. But this movie, what it feels like to me, my reading of this movie is not that it is a celebration of pagan spirituality or a celebration of nature spirituality. It's actually a look at religious extremism. That's my reading of it. What you have is this group of people that are allegedly pagan are really in a cult. This is a misogynistic cult led by a cult leader that is very, in the end, proven to be very unnatural. And so it's very much a form of religious extremism, not pagan at all. Pagan is a mask. The paganism and the folk culture are mask. They forced it on the people of this island. And then you have that up against the religious extremism of Christianity. And this is very much something that people were concerned about at this time in the 70s. The cults of the early 70s that were tied into in sometimes fake paganism, not the real modern paganism that we have, but a fake paganism, fake nature spiritual, as well as the extremism of other forms of religion, Christianity. So for me, this movie is a rejection of all forms of religious extremism. So that is my reading. So when I look at this movie, I go, yeah, cool, Beltane and all the folk culture, that's super fun. But I don't see this as a celebration of paganism at all. Actually, I see it as a negative So that's my reading of this movie. And so that's why I say, wait, hold on, I'm going to back up, because a lot of pagans go, whoa, hold on, don't touch our movie. This is our sacred movie. Jason's already uncomfortable, I can see.
No, I mean, you're not wrong. I mean, almost every movie that we love to some degree, especially like the big ones from the 70s, like this one, and then The Craft, the witches, the pagans are always problematic to some degree, right? It's never a clean, these are the good guys type of things. So when it comes to the Wicker Man, you can see what you want in it. And as I said before, human sacrifice is pretty rotten, right? It's not where you want him to go, but you get it. I mean, Howie also is sort of rotten.
He's rotten.
Yeah. So it makes you at least a little more sympathetic to him burning to death, but no one should ever burn to death.
No.
Yeah, you're not wrong. And I'm not going to say that you're wrong. I just love it because of the influence I think that it had on paganism and the excitement that you get while watching it, going, wow, this looks like something people would have done in pagan circles in 1973 and up until the end.
And that's why I still like it. It still was a horror film of the bad people in it. He made it very clear that it was to control the people. It wasn't. He made that very clear in a statement. My grandfather, well, I don't remember this. I'm not a good quoter like Miss Courtney. But
I have a quote actually.
You have it. You have it. See,
well,
but he made it clear. That shows exactly what you said. Religious extremism. But it doesn't take away from the fun pagan dressing on top of it. To me, it's a horror film.
Yep.
And the Christians just as bad, and the pagans, everybody, humans. They're silly.
I was going to say that too. I'm sorry to interrupt, but yes, you're right. What made the movie really scary was the cult leader aspect in a post. What are they? Heaven's Gate. A post. People of Praise. Who are they? The
Jonestown people.
Kool-Aid.
The Jonestown.
Which was after this.
But it was there, yeah.
Yeah.
And that's what I'm saying. In a post world where David Koresh, where these typically male members do create this sort of movement that is, like Heather says, it is the male gaze. Now, in the newer film, I fell asleep halfway through it because it was terrible. However, if memory serves, wasn't the villain it was a woman, and
it was Olympia Dukakis, who is a goddess worshiper herself in real life.
Wait, what?
Yeah.
I thought it was Ellen Burstyn. I didn't get to watch. I thought it was Ellen Burstyn.
I only saw it once because it doesn't exist, but I know Olympia Dukakis was in the film, so
No.
I'm probably wrong.
I thought it was, but
I defer to you.
No, but Ellen, if it is, I think it was Ellen Burstyn. But you're right, Jason. She was not. She wasn't a nature worshiper, but she was very spiritual. Because I did a whole thing on another film she had done in 1980 where she was really involved with different spiritual stuff. But
yeah.
It was Ellen Burstyn.
It was Ellen Burstyn, yeah. But so you're right, just wrong person. But yeah, you were, I mean, for that film. But go ahead.
Don't women run the society in the second film, right?
Yep.
Yeah. Not that exists.
From my understanding, and I've only seen parts of the second one. I thought I had seen it, but I kept confusing it with Season of the Witch, which is another Nicolas Cage movie from the same period of time. But I hadn't seen all of it, and from my understanding is that movie is even more misogynistic than the original one, because that's very much of women hate men and he hates men and he's sympathetic and the women are not sympathetic, and it's just a much more of a misogynistic anti-woman film from what I understand. So I won't say that, but yeah, I mean, I get it. The pagan stuff is super fun, and it's fun to imagine what a world would be like that was defined by a pagan culture, and I think that's what this provides, that fantasy of what if we had a pagan world. But unfortunately, this is really not the reality. That this film is not presenting the right reality.
I will say though that when Christopher Lee is your cult leader, it's probably it's a lot easier to buy into it, right? It's
I would join that cult.
Yeah.
I would willingly join the Christopher Lee cult.
Yeah.
Sign me up.
And doesn't he dress in drag at one point in the film
Mhm.
at the end? Like you
Yes.
see him like leading things with the long hair and he's kind
Mhm.
of dressed in drag. And all I could think was, hell yeah. I was like super excited because now, you know, people would be so upset about that. And I was like, Christopher Lee, always ahead of the curve. Always.
You know, he eventually turns into Sawmon, so you might not want to join his cult.
It's true. Yeah.
Just saying.
You can join Nicolas Cage's. I heard he's accepting. So
Well, Nicolas Cage is accepting, and thank you, Renfield.
Oh, we're not there yet.
Yeah.
I know.
I haven't seen it yet.
So we're gonna tease. Everybody see Renfield. Everybody see Renfield.
So the quote that I pulled up, actually,
Yes.
it's not a funny one, but well, it's a little funny, but I pulled it up on my computer so I could get it right because I didn't have time to write it down, but it fits in with all of that. Like this quote was when I was like, oh yeah, and I was starting to really get the whole like comparison between the two different religions or whatever. But it's when Sergeant Howie says, what religion can they possibly be learning jumping over bonfires? And the leader guy says parthenogenesis. And literally, as Miss Rose would doubtless say in her assiduous way, reproduction without sexual union. And Sergeant Howie says, oh, what is all this? I mean, you've got fake biology, fake religion. Sir, have these children never heard of Jesus? And then the cult leader goes, himself, the son of a virgin, impregnated, I believe, by a ghost.
It is a great
And
line.
I was like, there it is. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, there were some, like, I laughed a lot.
Mhm.
And I did like there was what you guys are all saying. Like, it was cool to see. It did feel very real. A lot of the things that they were doing felt very real, but I don't know. It was just, it felt like a fever dream watching it. It felt like a fever dream. But then watching the second one, or the newer one, Jason's favorite, made the fever dream make more sense. Like it was a better put together movie. I think it had a better story.
Well, it was more modern. It was probably slicker. From all the scenes I said, it was.
No, I mean the old one was better because
the old one was better. Okay,
right, because the new one took lines and everything directly from the old one.
Okay,
but the story was changed in such a way that like it took what the movie was and took it away. Like it wasn't
that whole love affair with a woman that is in the cult. I mean, what I liked about the 1973 version was this cop really has no connection to these people, but he's just a good cop, and he sees that there's this kid that's been missing, and he has to make certain that this kid is found. But then in the movie that doesn't exist, Jason, thank you very much.
His favorite, yeah.
In the movie that doesn't exist, he knows this woman, and it's her kid, and it was someone that he was somehow in a relationship with. So I didn't buy it.
Yeah, it was weird because they did take a lot of the same lines, and that was weird to hear, but like the story it felt completely different. And I didn't like it. It made me like the original more than not at all.
The second movie also gets rid of a lot of sort of the old folklore at the end during the Beltane May Day celebration. They're wearing all those sort of mummers hats with the animal faces, and Punch and Judy shows were a big deal in England for a very long time, especially during holiday periods. So seeing that on the screen like makes like the person who loves holidays in me like geek out a little bit, because it's such a part of those cultures and those societies, and those are like front and center in the 1973 movie.
What I think is interesting is go ahead, Patty. I'm sorry.
No, I was just jumping in. I'm just looking at the comments because everybody's making these lovely comments. But somebody just said, "Can anybody see my comments?" Mary, I might have missed them. I just wanted to comment. People going, she just wanted if anybody was seeing her comments. So you might have to repost it, Mary, if it was a comment you wanted to do. We are actually reading them. We just don't comment on, and our producer put some of them up, which is great. And we want them on the comments. So yeah, because you guys are saying some really great stuff. So I didn't mean to interrupt. Go back to you. She was just, it was sliding down.
Yeah, no, it's all good. I find this, what I think is interesting watching this is why it's horror and how it's horror, because I think depending on what religious background and what angle, it's always like that. How you react to a movie depends on who you are. But I think in this case, you know, some of the stuff that's supposed to be scary in this movie to people who practice paganism is not very scary, because when you watch the camera move, it slides over certain things that are pagan. And I think they're supposed to evoke fear or like sinister behavior. You know, I think there's a witch's ladder at one point, and there's an evil eye symbol, and there's all these things. And for, you know, people who are witches or practice forms of paganism, you know, or even the naked girls jumping over the fire, which may seem sinister to some people, to us, obviously, all of us, we just go, yeah, okay. That's not going to evoke the same fear as it would in somebody who is more along the lines of practicing a religion like Howie. So, and the cop. So you're going to get different range of reactions to this film, depending on, you know, your own religious morality, your own ethics, etc. So I think that's really interesting. But, you know, for me, like I think Richard-Lael said, is the scary part is for me is really seeing this as a religious extremism and the dangers of it in two different ways, and the conflict that happens. That's where that sort of atmospheric, slow, you know, creepy fear come in. Like, this is one religion that's extreme, abutting a cult that's also extreme. And, you know, what do you do with it? So I think that's where people may have different reactions to it. And I think that's really interesting.
I agree. It was a slow burn.
Mm-hmm. Until the end, and then it sped up.
And I almost remember the quote. I don't remember the quote, but like naked children jumping over a bonfire. Well, it would be dangerous with clothes on, which is we tried to do it in Beltane grass. Yeah.
I think I've heard that at rituals, actually.
Yes,
Hold up your robes or you're going to wind up on fire.
Skin burns much slower at first, you know, in that immediately.
Wow.
Yeah.
You know, I almost caught on fire once. Now I'm really allergic to cigarette smoke, but for those of you who know, I this crown, I used to play Freddie Mercury. I was a different kind of queen. And I thought, well, Freddie Mercury smoked, I can smoke. I lived in Vegas. So I remember I popped a cigarette in my mouth and I lit it the wrong end and it caught on fire. And someone yells, "Oh my God, check out the flaming queen." And I went, because I was Freddie Mercury on fire.
Yeah. That is funny. And to try to repeat it would be so hard. But no, I've had somebody, this is not a story for this movie, but I've had somebody burst into flames. I've talked about it a lot at one of my seances. It's weird having somebody burst into flames.
I will say, speaking of things bursting into flames, in Jason's favorite version of this movie, when he digs up the grave, there's the doll, and the doll's face is melted, and he's screaming, "Who burned this?" Or "How did this burn? How did this burn?" And I was like, yes, it did. That's where it belongs.
You know, another thing that makes the first movie so much better than the second movie is the songs. When I first saw it, I was like surprised that it is basically a musical. And it came out in 1973, and I think the first time the soundtrack was released was 1998. So when the movie originally was released, the soundtrack didn't come out. And I often wonder, had that soundtrack come out in 1973, I think those songs would have been inescapable at pagan festivals for the rest of my life. So in some ways, I'm relieved that didn't come out until later.
I agree with you. I think they definitely would have been. And I know when I hear them, every time I hear them, I'm like, oh, there it is again. I think they've definitely permeated the culture to some degree. You
still hear them on pagan albums. Like artists will redo like corn rigs and barley rigs.
Yep.
And yeah. and the Beltane song. They'll redo all of them.
Mhm.
Willow's song, especially, I think is a favorite. Yeah, I play those sometimes at our rituals, and my wife despises every song from the Wicker Man soundtrack, which makes me want to play them even more.
Yeah, I'm telling you, those are that soundtrack is gonna take over the Disney songs in my car for a hot minute. I'm just gonna be honest, because that was my favorite part for sure.
As someone who loves musicals, I'm going to say that those songs are not going to take over anything. That was like my least favorite. I don't mind if they had played in the background and they had been purposeful, but I think it would have been a much better movie if they had not actually tried to like make it into a musical and done it that way. That was like one of my least favorite parts of the whole thing. If they had played in the background, I would have been okay, but I could have lost that part of it.
See, I loved it because they really tried to find old English folk songs.
Oh yeah, they did.
And one of the melodies, I think, is the oldest written down melody and they put it in one of the songs in the movie. So I'm sort of obsessed with the soundtrack from a, historical perspective.
I love that. And they did it like people doing it versus a musical. I mean, it was a musical, but I like that.
I also think that added to that part, the part of it that like made it a little bit unnerving, which was that he's there frantically trying to find this lost girl, and everyone's like dancing and singing and being naked and doing things, and like nobody cares. Like, so that was like, and like saying cryptic things. So that like for me, the songs added to that a little bit, because what are these nuts doing, like dancing and singing while there's a missing girl? Which I was like, hey, I'll join in. That's what I want.
I wouldn't say I wouldn't join in, because I do love to sing and dance at any given point. But it, as a movie, I don't know. I think this is a fascinating and important movie, but I don't love it as much as a lot of pagans do. But the songs are, as soon as you hear them, it's like, oh yeah, I think I heard that. I know that song. This is just one of those things. Like every chant you hear in a pagan ritual.
If Magnet ever toured, I would so totally be there, front row, extra VIP pass to meet the musicians. It would be expensive, and it would be totally worth it. And I would be one of 8 people in the audience.
We do need some new ones, Patty.
I have not been to as many pagan. My are more paranormal and then less. Are we getting any new songs? I'm kind of tired of the old ones.
No, we do need new ones. I completely agree with you. I think we need Jason. We need to get on that. Let's write some.
Yeah.
Please.
we need to figure it out. Yeah. There are good people writing songs, but for whatever reason, they just the chants haven't permeated into the greater culture yet. We'll have to work on it.
Yeah,
we need a Witch's Movie Coven chant for after the cackling.
Okay, I think that's a great idea.
Why they burn? Why they burn? He has his father's eyes.
He has his father's eyes.
All right. Well, I guess it is time to vote. I've got to find a wand. They just fly around my desk. There's one. All right. Wicker Man. We're just voting on the original right now. We can vote on the other one if you don't watch. I didn't watch it this time, but let's vote on the original 1973 Wicker Man. Up, down, and 2. I can't even. This is too much to count. We have 2 ups, 1 down, and 2 neutrals.
Yeah.
You're completely down, Courtney. Completely down.
I'll go to like, I don't know, 7 o'clock for the songs.
It can't be a 0. Come on.
I'm at like 7 o'clock for the songs, not 6 o'clock. Okay. 7 o'clock for the songs.
I have something to get off my chest.
Okay.
Is it close?
This is the most titillating conversations that we have had. I am so glad that we were able to keep abreast of the situation.
I'm just gonna nip these.
This was a slow burn.
Yeah, I'm just gonna nip these jokes in the bud.
So I don't.
That was humorous.
I honestly think up, wands up and neutral ties, wands down loses. But you guys, did you guys vote out there? Wands up. Robert Hicks, wands up. Anybody else vote? Yeah, he is funny. Private movie kind of couldn't version of this one. But one person voted. Robert voted, and he's got wands up. So I'm sorry, wands up. Nudity, good songs, bad songs, evil Christians, evil pagans. Wands up wins. I don't know that no opinion. Lisa, no opinion. Not everybody's seen it, but do you guys recommend going to see it? If people who
Absolutely.
People who watch or listen
Watch it
to
one time.
this, I do recommend people see it, whether you love it.
Have a cup of coffee and have your listening ears on for the songs, and then try to make it through. I played video games while I was watching it.
It takes place in Scotland, so pour yourself a nice dram of scotch.
Yeah.
And cozy up and prepare for Christopher Lee's greatest role.
Yeah. And I must say, scenery was beautiful. That island in Scotland itself, the scenery was, the oceans of this was just gorgeous. I'm getting more people are voting. Keep voting. It's wands up, wands up, wands up.
The film was filmed on a number of different islands, and the scenery, like you said, was absolutely beautiful. And Christopher Lee has said that this was his favorite role. He actually didn't get paid for it. He decided that he loved the script so much that he would do it. It was such a low budget they couldn't pay him at this point, so he wound up doing it for free. And he has said said at some point that this was his favorite role. And that's something to be said, considering what he's been in. I mean, some of the stuff he's done, Count Dooku. So I think that is that's pretty cool. And I do think I believe that watching any movie, bad or good, is important. And so I'll watch anything. And a professor of mine once says, how do you know what a good movie is if you don't know what a bad movie is? So I'll watch anything. And so I definitely think if you are pagan, a witch, in that world at all, or interested in folk culture or interested in horror, you have to see this movie. Yeah. You know, because it's a standout movie in horror. It's a classic cult folk horror film, British classic, and of course a beloved film of the pagan community. So I think it's definitely a marker. See it, love it, hate it, but see it.
And then
I have to
one's up or down.
Sorry, I was just gonna say, real quick, I have to agree with that wholeheartedly, because I love movies and I watch a lot of movies, but I watch a lot of newer movies, and I've had all these older movies on my list to be seen, like Rosemary's Baby and all the ones that we've seen recently. And if it weren't for you guys and it weren't for the Witches Movie Coven, I probably wouldn't have gotten around to watching them. So I don't regret watching this. I don't regret watching any of them. But exactly that.
That one with the mermaid and the knife.
That was a nightmare.
That wasn't on the list.
No, that
wasn't anybody's fault except Tubi.
Also, Heather was talking about how beautiful the scenery is. Weird production note: this movie was actually shot in October and November in Scotland, and some of the foliage was actually fake to make it look more like spring. And Britt Ekland would complain that it was very cold and they wouldn't let them put on a whole lot of clothes. Britt Ekland's lines were also dubbed throughout the film. So just, I do the deep dive, so you don't have to. Fascinating little tidbits of trivia for this film. So,
Wicker Man, check it out, everybody, and then let us know if one's up or one's down next week. Well, we have just a couple more minutes. Do we know what we're going to do next week? Have we decided yet?
Yeah. We'll have to ask our
we made some kind of a list somewhere, but I don't.
Well, we'd have to ask our producers, because
I feel like it's written down somewhere.
It is written down. They have the list. They have the list. Oh, it's Bell Book and Candle.
Oh, Bell Book and Candle.
Oh,
Staying with the classics. Staying with the classics. Okay.
I'm very excited about that. Sorry.
Okay, so everybody, your homework for next week is watch Bell, Book, and Candle. Okay, anybody have anything interesting they do want? I know we talked in the beginning, but anybody, one thing I do want to tell you is that everybody needs to wear what Courtney's wearing right now. You need a Witches Movie Coven blanket.
Oh,
And
that's
you-
not my blanket. This is just my sweatshirt.
Oh,
But
it is? Well, we're pretending
because-
it's a blanket. That's
no, hold on, because my blanket has migrated from the chair where it normally lives. It came with me on my road trip and then now has migrated to my bed. So it sleeps with me because it's so snuggly and delightful, and I forgot to get it out of my bed to bring it back to the chair today. So you should go to Witch's Movie Coven and get one.
Yes, which is Mystery Control. Actually, go to Mystery Control.
Oh yeah, sorry.
And you could buy, which is movie coven stuff. You could buy Bro Witch stuff. You could buy,
I got a Bro Witch shirt. It's in my living room.
and you could buy. We have now really launched Patty's Power Panties of Protection. We've got Patty's Spells Casting. So there's all sorts of really fun stuff, and there's all sorts of codes, which I don't know what you're supposed to give code, but Patty's Power Panties. If you like those, if you put the code Patty, you can get 25% off. That's huge. That's practically giving you those panties. Everybody needs magic panties. Superheroes have magic panties. Mormons have magic panties. Everybody needs magic panties. Change your underwear. Change your life. That's it. That's all I got.
I love it.
So I am in town. I'm going to Texas at the end of the month. I'm doing 5 days in Dallas, but I'm here for almost 2 weeks. I'm really glad about that. And what do you have? Don't you have just something coming up, Jason? Or?
I'm home for the next 2.5 months, and I'm
Oh, wow.
thrilled. My next event is in July in Southern Ohio, the Starwood Festival, which is the same time as Mystic South. There's a lot on the agenda that weekend.
Wow. Anybody else have anything coming up that people can come see you at? Or we're all kind of home for a minute.
Yeah.
I'm doing Mystic South, so I will be there rather than at Starwood, and that's coming up in mid-July. And I'm on the board. We're about to release the schedule of all the great things, witchy, pagan, fun stuff, and I'm doing several book-related things as an editor, and then also, of course, my talk on haunted dolls. So I'm prepping. I'm gonna have to have a chat with you, Patty, and your doll there. I might need some photos.
Yes. Oh,
So,
yeah. We'll get you some
she needs to be a star.
Yes.
So I'm very excited about that. So that's in Atlanta in mid-July. Other than
you
that,
gonna
I am home.
Are you going to tape that? We would love to see that. Put it on video.
I may do it. We'll see. I hadn't thought about it, but sure, I will think about taping it or taping it. We sound so decades old, Patty.
I know.
Recording it.
I know. Recording it.
Maybe you can turn it into a film strip production.
But I still have a 1978 telephone.
I love it.
Recording it. Yeah. I mean, yeah, and put it up on YouTube or something. That would be awesome.
Yeah.
So yeah, I am home too. Again, I've got Louisville, Texas, Miracles of Joy, Ventura County Paracon for paranormal people. We have the first week in June, I think, Unearthing the Supernatural, which is a Navajo. They bring their Navajo Nation rituals to like ghost hunting, and they're pretty amazing.
Wow.
That's incredible.
I love what cultures are doing, bringing their even witchdom, paganness. So many, the team I just work with, Ghost Finders, they have a regular witch on their team, and she opens it up with ritual. I filmed with them 2 weeks ago, and we opened it up with ritual. It was beautiful. So everybody's bringing their culture.
Nice.
So anybody else have anything to say?
Patty, I do actually. I had a really big meeting this week, very important meeting, and I wore Patty's Power Panties, and it went really well.
Yes. They work, you guys. I've been doing it for decades, and and now that just makes them easy because they come with a little thing. Now, did you get the spell off them? Because they don't come with a spell. The spell that you have to go, I got to figure that out, or send them, make sure they get an email, because the power, if you go onto the site, there is a little like spell where you can purchase them. It's real simple. I mean, you can make it.
I'm going to tell you right now, I didn't do anything like that, and they still were very, very powerful. I got the witch ones, and I felt like I was the star of the show when I was wearing them, and I was in control, and I ran the show, and it was great. And I didn't do there was no fancy footwork involved. It was just putting them on and putting my pants on over them, because I don't go to meetings naked, unlike the people we watch in movies.
Good. I might need a quote from you.
Done. That was it.
I might need a quote. Thank you. Record that, Rob. Anyway, well, I guess we have And witches out there, you join us. We want your family in the other room to wonder what's going on. One more thing that we do every week at this time. What do witches do? 1, 2, 3.